In this episode, propping up sermons, the matter of membership, reimagining worship gatherings through a missional lens, and teachers, trainers, and coaches. Oh my.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
With those. That was good, Danielle.
Thanks.
You're so creative.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
That's why I keep you around.
I know. Job security. Words. That's funny. That's scary also. Very scary. Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Yep.
Megachurch memories. This is where we focus on what was, what should or shouldn't have been, and what endured. Today, you chose.
Yeah, I chose sermon props and actually really stage props.
Stage design.
Stage design.
Okay, yeah, that opens it up a bit.
It's and even and which I think led to other things like giveaways.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
All of this stuff.
All
means to like get people in the doors. No, we're
100%.
we're talking a lot about, and again, I always want to say when we do these segments that we're not besmirching our heritage. We are a little bit.
No, we're not.
But I'm very thankful.
If it hadn't happened.
Right. I always come back to our country needed.
Yes.
Our country needed the church to do what it did in the 70s and 80s. And as Saddleback and Willow and some of these were like paving the way into this world, it was what our country needed.
Right.
And so as we're kind of shifting out of these models, it's fun to look back and think about things and make fun.
Yeah.
And
because some of it just went a little too far sometimes. And some of it was just shame on the culture, honestly. We were just trying to keep up.
This is what brought you people in the doors.
Oh my goodness.
So
this is a good one.
Stage props. Like I remember like even like so I remember like, seeing pictures of these. It was before the internet. So seeing pictures of these churches that were in a magazine, Outreach magazine or whatever. It was like, look at what this church did. And it was like a full boat on the stage, like a yacht on the stage. And we're doing a thing about Peter walking on the water or, a car on the stage. Or I even remember like some, like, I think it was honestly Chuck Swindoll.
Whoa.
Maybe, or Chuck...
Schumer?
No. It was Chuck.
Kidding.
It was like one of the Chucks. There was Chuck Smith, Chuck Swindoll, Chuck, what was the prison guy that helped Richard Nixon? Anyway.
What? Different podcast? History podcast?
I think it was Chuck Swindoll, like in all leathers, rode his motorcycle down
you're right.
the... You
I
remember
think it
this?
was him. I think it was him.
Rode his motorcycle down the center stage or the center aisle to come up to preach or whatever.
That's
so there was all kind of like stuff going on.
And people doing stuff on rooftops. Like all Didn't someone like sleep on a bed? Didn't someone sleep on a bed on a rooftop in like Vegas or something? Or it was like that.
You are right.
Do you remember? It was like super scandalous.
You are right.
I don't remember what
it was. Was it in Vegas? I think it was in Texas.
Texas. It was Texas. Yeah, it was the big church in Texas.
Because I think it was.
That does
what's
not
his name?
narrow it
Junior?
down. Yes, Junior. Ed Young.
Ed Young.
Yes.
It was like a marriage and sex series or something, and he and his wife were sleeping on a roof.
Yeah, it was some weird. Anyway.
So anyway,
it was a wild
these are
time.
Throwbacks to the attractional model.
And
of
I want to
church.
say we had a boat.
We did.
We didn't have that kind of boat, but we borrowed Aaron Lundberg's boat and put it on the stage here. But I don't remember why. I think it was for a vision thing. I remember two small things that we would do. Some successful, some not.
Stage tricks
stuff. One time, our children's pastor wanted to do like a
visual aid.
Yeah, visual aid for talking about the power of like team, like volunteers. And I think it was like a recruitment kind of a thing for volunteers. And he had like, I don't know, 8 or 10 dozen eggs.
Yeah, it was a lot of eggs.
It was probably more than that. It was a lot of eggs. And then a big 2x4. And so he on purpose was like, if I step on this egg, it's going to break. So he had this little area that was like ready for a broken egg.
Yeah, if I just put my foot on this couple eggs,
So then you have the carton, so that's some structure. And then you have the board, and then you're distributing the weight, whatever, of all the work.
It was a
and
piece
blah,
of
blah.
plywood.
Oh, plywood, that's right.
It was a piece of plywood.
You guys?
He
did not step on it right. I mean, that's the problem. He didn't step on it right. You had to probably step right in the middle, and he kind of like stepped to the side.
For full distribution.
Those eggs.
They smashed so fast.
But
the problem was
gone.
like there was like a big buildup. This was proving was proving this unbelievable point that we're better together and we're stronger together and we can't break together.
Beautiful. I love that. I love thinking about that. Oh, so funny.
As we do, Danielle, are there any lasting benefits from this era of our, or this little entree into stage props and sermon props?
Again, somehow I think this has become my new spiritual gift because of this podcast.
I know,
drawing random conclusions.
And I've just come to start
You're just
throwing
like, hey,
to you.
someone
I'm
will
like,
think of it.
Somebody you think of
Enough to go on. So, okay, yes, like you said, it was the height of the attractional model movement. It made sense at that time.
Get people in
to
the
get
doors.
people indoors, have a draw. I do think it led to a healthy, at least for us, led to a healthy creative process. It also led us to the idea, we didn't fully realize this right away, but the idea of a structure for a sermon series and like a big idea structure.
That's true. Yeah.
I think that all was stirring up in that time.
You're right.
And so the idea of chunking teaching up for a normal human, I mean, we're going to lose 8 pastors here,
right.
But we're going through the book of Mark, for example, right now. We've been going through for 2 years. Great. We've put it in movements on purpose. You chunked it up the way you thought it should be chunked up.
Yep.
And within that, we put 4-week, 8-week, 6-week series that are just able to be grasped and understood and kept together and memorable.
There's a beginning, there's an end to the little segments, and people can invite and not invite.
And I think that's one of the strengths of our preaching team is that we do that. And so I think that was some of the origins of that.
That's good. Yeah, I think about how that kind of a thing, if you're going to do stuff like that, it does force you to think ahead.
Yeah, right.
Like you can't Saturday night decide to get a boat on the stage. I mean...
we did. Yeah, you shouldn't.
You can't Saturday night think about 57 eggs.
Yeah, what grocery store can I go to get? I'm sure this will work, right? Yeah, but yeah, no.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, you got a plan. Yeah, that's good. That's
Great.
a good point. Okay, wow, amazing. All right, so we're like on a little redemption train.
Yeah,
not really. Okay, training notes. So this is overflow of things you're working on, training, Q&A. Like questions we might get.
Yeah.
And you have been revamping our, for lack of a better term, membership class.
Yeah.
That used to be wrapped into, we had a thing called Core.
Yep.
And it was 4 weeks.
Yep.
Fun fact, started as 16 weeks.
Started as four-week classes. Yeah.
So ask us how our database handled that. So 4 4-week classes that took people years to get through.
And most never did.
No, I don't think I did it. So anyway.
I was too into it. I gave up. Figured out it wasn't.
I figured it out around you guys. Yeah. So we got that to 4 weeks. And that was another example of like a outside voice coming in and being like, hey, what you guys doing?
Yeah.
So membership used to be part of Core. So Core was kind of like a next step out of Core would be, do you want to become a member? And so when we redeveloped that through the disciple making lens with launch and having that discipleship primer, I can't talk today. We had no place for membership because we didn't want that to be tied to membership.
We didn't want it to attach to our discipleship training orientation because we felt it was like enough of a different commitment than that. And so we really wrestled through, I mean, you said this could be a Q&A. We really wrestled through a year long of questioning, is membership a thing anymore? Is it worth it? Is it something that we should consider? It's not super biblical, although there's lots of biblical concepts around it. But it's not like in the book of Acts, he was like, "Yay, become a member," and that's part of your discipleship journey.
Like fill out your membership thing as you're receiving tongues at Pentecost. You have to
right.
Anyway.
Hey, Cornelius.
Deep cut. Good
anyway,
one.
yeah. So. So a lot of debate, figuring out what to do with it. We actually paused membership for a year, so it really only affects people who are coming from other churches,
who have an expectation,
who value membership. And then I think once we had something in place, we can promote it as what it is and what it's valuable for. Good. But the only people missing it right now are people coming from other churches going, I want to be a member of Grace. I was a member at my former church, and so what do I do? And we're like, well, wait until we figure it out. So
didn't we used to like transfer memberships?
We do. Yeah. That's
or do we still? That's old school, right? Like you literally paper, email or whatever, like transfer the membership.
The church secretary from the other church emails are
get on the horse, take it over. Anyway, sorry.
Pony Express.
I'm going to stop talking for the rest of the episode. Please go.
No, that's still a thing.
Yeah,
it's still very much a thing.
Interesting.
Although we struggle to acknowledge that in special cases we might acknowledge that, but it's like it's different.
Yeah.
You know, what we're asking people to do is different than what that church asked you to do.
Right.
So anyway, the wrestling with the question of does membership still matter? I think we've landed on the fact that it does. I wrote up a little thing. In fact, I'll probably post it in the show notes here about why, and we made it pre-work for people coming into this membership class. So I'm right now, as we're recording this, I'm teaching our first new membership class this Saturday morning. We took it from 4 weeks to 3 hours.
Thumbs up.
So, and you've been part of the final process of that, of me just like cutting and cutting and cutting, getting down to the most important stuff. We landed with 5 commitments, 5 core commitments of what it means to be a member at Grace. And so that's a different thing. But what I want to talk about is why we believe membership still matters. So I put out a little pre-work video that kind of went down 6 things. I just want to share them with the audience. Great. So it makes your commitment visible. So everybody loves the idea of being able to worship God anywhere and everywhere. And I walk through the woods and I worship God, whatever. And there is this universal church and But church membership is this moment that allows you to plant a flag in a specific community of real people on a real street with a real address. And it's your way of saying, I'm in, these are my people, I'm committing to follow Jesus with them.
Yeah, it's good.
And I think there's still something to be said for that, you know.
Really
so
cool.
It makes your commitment visible. Second is it rebels against a low commitment culture. And I think this is one of the things, it's almost like it's stayed around long enough to be cool again, you know, like bell bottoms or whatever.
It's
like, you know, because at back in the 50s and 60s, there's this like, yes, of course, everybody commits to, and we're also part of the Moose Club and the Lions Club and the, you know, the corner, whatever, where membership, you know, people joined, they were joiners.
They were joiners, and
people aren't joiners
it's how you
anymore.
found your community.
Right. And they're not joiners anymore. And so with that goes, I mean, that was one of our big arguments. People aren't joiners anymore. Should we just do away with this? And then it's like when you start thinking about that counterculturally going, but, you know, everybody prioritizes choice, convenience. There's lots of it. I want to keep my options open, shop for the best deal, not commit to anything, and as few strings attached as possible. And it's like, we just went, man, if we could lean back into that and say membership pushes against our low commitment culture.
Love it.
And says, put a stake in the ground. Third, it corrects our over-individualism. And so this idea of we love our independence, but the New Testament, it just has no concept of the just me and Jesus approach. There's this one anothering that I think benefits from this kind of corporate approach. So membership, it fosters accountability and growth. And so again, because of that commitment thing, if I'm not I don't have as much accountability, right? So if we're just dating and not there's different accountability that comes with being married than comes with dating. And so
that's good.
There's an accountability and growth that comes. It anchors us in real relationships. And so again, easy to chat about community, much harder to live it. And true community, it's awkward, it takes a while, it's demanding, it involves flawed people, ourselves included. And there's something about kind of signing on the dotted line that goes, I'm in it, I'm in the journey for that, you know. And then finally, I think it just reflects the heart of God's commitment. And so even though membership isn't specifically mentioned in the New Testament, there's a lot in there about belonging. There's a lot in there about covenant, commitment. Like we just see these relationships with God and people through all of the scriptures, this idea that, God models faithful, binding commitments. And so we just said there's still something to be said for that. So at least for this next season, I think we're keeping membership around, and we're just condensed it way down into a shorter thing, and then lots of Q's and A's, and then hopefully people will get into our discipleship training stuff, and that'll be kind of the entree into our church.
That's great. And I think for all the things that you said here, my mind goes back to another conversation we had, I think it might have been on this podcast, of just the idea of people quickly shuffling like from church to church. And this, it's not like an entrapment thing, but if you're a member, you're much more likely to give some thought, I think, to that move, and also be connected enough that you can find the right person to have the right conversations if your church is bigger or whatever. But anyway, so I love that really reinforces the idea of, that's my favorite one, is that it kind of puts us together as a family. Like, I'm doing this with these people. I think is like such a cool outcome.
Yeah, love it.
Cool. Okay. As we tweak our assimilation model to have more of a disciple-making focus and invent a multiplication funnel to awake the lake and reach our region, we're learning as we go. Each week, we want to have a topic to discuss in front of you and with you in a practical moment of learning that happened that week. Today's topic is reimagining worship gatherings through a missional lens, and we have Andrew Silbert with us today. Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Andrew has a wife, Addie, with 3 daughters, Jovi, Eliza, and Nora. Eliza, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I said it wrong. He lives in Clymer, New York. Fun fact, he used to run an ice cream shop.
Yeah.
So a lot of us are jealous of that.
Yeah.
And sad that he didn't just bring the ice cream shop here.
In the form of a truck.
Exactly.
They do trucks now, and you could have just
Well, we have a
brought
truck.
I mean, we have a truck.
You could refurbish it.
We'll keep
Think
that.
about it.
We'll call that Plan B.
Or a missional calling. And by reach our region, we mean reach our staff. Yeah.
With ice cream.
So Andrew is over the B part of our pathway and strategy, worship gatherings, being together in worship. And so we'll talk more about that soon here. But Derek, why did you want to talk about worship today?
Yeah, in a recent episode, talking with Dan Nold, I reminded him of a quote that he said to me when we were talking about this, reinventing our church. And he said, it won't really hit until you start messing with worship.
Yeah.
And in terms of hit your people.
Yeah,
like that's,
take culture.
I mean, that's when people will start noticing.
Yeah.
Because you can do all kind of stuff behind the scenes and offer different classes and da-da-da-da, and people can come or not. It's when you start messing around with their worship that people will start to notice that there are changes. So we've gone very slow in this area. We're an old church, as we've said before, and so I've used the metaphor of turning the aircraft carrier, not turning a speedboat. So it's a long turn, but we have made some changes in our worship experience that I think are notable, and some small baby steps that are kind of leading us forward. So we haven't gone to the extreme that Dan Nold talked about, where it was like not cancel, but do a Sunday a month outside the walls. So they only meet 3 Sundays a month in the building. 1 Sunday a month is in neighborhoods. And we haven't gone that far, but we are making some tweaks to our worship. So yeah, love Andrew's perspective and his leadership in this area. And you've been part of a lot of what we've been messing around with.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled that you're here to help us talk about it.
It's good to be here. Yeah. And get to talk about something that's really close to my heart, and something that, like you said, we're moving in slowly.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that I've seen over, 20 or 22 years of leading worship, being involved in the church, is when you start to mess with worship, the stakes get pretty high.
Yeah.
That there are times that if you move too quickly, it can bring division. So we want to be really tactful in how we do that.
Yeah. Let's talk about just a couple of the couple of little moves we've made, some of the changes that we've made since you've been around, and talk about the implications of those things and all that.
Yeah.
So let's throw some out.
Yeah, it's great. And like you said, Derek, we've tried a lot of things, and we've implemented a lot of things that have kind of stuck. We've tried some things and we've pulled them back. We said, we said that didn't really work. That fell a little flat. So, I think some of the very tactical little things. We've kept the doors to our worship center open longer as we start that
into
first worship set. So into the worship service. I think that opens up a barrier, kind of a social barrier that maybe was there before, but it says, hey, you're not late. You're not late to the service. You can still come in. There's a little bit of a traffic flow thing, and one of the things that also helps is we've talked about the atrium and the cafe area being that space for sort of communal gathering, fellowship. We don't want to close that off right away. We want a slower sort of influx into the service.
Yeah, the thing I like about that, and the other part of that I think was maybe the first. It doesn't sound like a big step, but it was kind of we took away the countdown.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
The big, and then at the end of the countdown, the doors close, the lights shut off. It sends this message almost like the show is starting.
Right.
You know? And I think the doors open, and the kind of all that stuff shifted a little bit. That it suggests that the Scripture says that everybody come with a psalm, hymn, and spiritual song, and a word to share that the church is happening in the lobby, and the church is also happening in the worship center, and there's not one that's right and one that's wrong, or one that's acceptable, one that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what the church looks like when the church gathers.
And I've used that a couple times in conversation where, the churches that I grew up in, there was a sense of when you got to this place, whether this is good or bad, where if I was in church maybe 10 minutes before the service we got there, you're talking to people, maybe you grab a cup of coffee, and then you hear the music, the service is starting, I better kind of head that way. To me, that was the point at which I recognized I had ownership in the church. And it wasn't like I own this place, it's mine. It's like this weight of responsibility that like, this is a place that I can call my home. And that changes my perspective on what this actually is and how we gather. And that's my deep and desperate desire for our church, is to say, you're not showing up for a show. You're showing up to our Father's house. We all carry a weight and responsibility. And some of these, like you said, small, little, subtle changes, maybe people didn't even notice. I think to some people that's a really big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're not encouraging lateness. Lateness is still one of the first pains of my existence. But there is a thing that the message can, again, we may have to be more overt about the message, but the message is, if you're in the middle of a conversation over coffee, that's probably more important. You're encouraging this person in their faith. That's probably more important than missing the first 30 seconds of the song. Because that is also the church at work.
Oh, absolutely. And I think so. One of the things that I think we tried and then pulled back on was to try to create that. Actually, I think we tried to create that in our worship center, in the sanctuary, and I don't think that worked as well.
Because those people were already to worship in the traditional sense of the word.
And I think like we can reserve space for conversation. That's really good. That's should be happening. I think inside of the worship center, it's kind of like, okay, there does need to be a liturgy. There's got to be a form to our worship, and then to sort of get everybody in and say, hey, for a minute, we're just going to have some conversation that's kind of broken apart, ask some questions, get some responses. It never felt natural. It always felt like we were kind of trying to create something that wasn't naturally happening, where we could have just realized, hey, this is naturally happening, right out there.
In the space where it should happen naturally.
We'll sort of sacrifice the first 2 or 3 minutes to allow that to naturally flow. I think that's been a good thing. But again, one of those things like we tried it here, we're going to pull back. This
that's
doesn't
a good
work
example.
here.
And I think about that whole social spaces thing. That there are certain expectations in certain social spaces, and so when you're in a room of 500 or 600 people, and you're like, hey, turn and talk to your neighbor, or there's this thing. It's like,
no. It's called no.
And for like those super extroverts, they're like, yes, this is what I've always dreamed
How many
of.
people can I talk to in the next 30 seconds?
But it's the same thing. It's like you don't go to a football game or something in a sports stadium, and they come over the announcement and go, turn and talk to your neighbor about you. That's not what you're expecting in that moment.
Correct.
We're all here for this other thing.
Yes.
And so, there is just like a sociological rule, kind of these unwritten rules to what spaces warrant what kind of intimacy.
Correct. And I think that was our big movement there, was like, we're trying to create an intimacy that doesn't belong here. Like it belongs somewhere else, and it's good to have it in the church, just doesn't belong in this space. So the acknowledgement of how those spaces can work to our advantage, but are there for very specific, different reasons.
And I'm even thinking as we're talking, I mean, one of the things that we may want to add, you're both involved in opening verbal kind of situations, but that we may want to even think about adding is just acknowledging that hey, we recognize that there's some conversations going on, outside this room before you came in that are really good. Like, don't stop just because you came into the room. Like, if you need to pick that up afterwards or take that person to lunch, or like, I think just kind of building more language around why we're doing that is probably going to be helpful to us. One of the other things I love is the and we're kind of doing this in sometimes and not others, but like, we've made more of a concerted effort, I think, to have the worship team come up out of the seats versus appear magically from the back when we close our eyes to pray. Again, mega church
sad.
Memories, right?
Yeah.
So that, everybody close your eyes, and all of a sudden I open my eyes and boom, the worship team's there.
It's like a
ready
full
to
band
go.
with 8 lights. It's like, let's do this.
Properly posed and positioned and makeup and hair dids.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things we talked about when we were starting to do that is just like, I love the message. Well, why don't you say, why do we do that?
Well, so from my perspective, one of the things that I think we're trying to, one of the things that's been on my heart, and that helps, is that there's not a stage and an audience. There's a family, right? And so to have people sort of magically appear on stage, sort of magically, all of these things sort of perfectly in place, it creates to me this mindset that what we have going on in the background is kind of a show. It's kind of this thing that we've really, it's well oiled, it's well polished, and we're here to present something that's, visually excellent. And to me, it puts our leaders and our worship team on a different, physically on a different level than the congregation, but also I think mentally on a different level. And I don't think we want to do that. I think anything that breaks down that barrier between congregation and stage in terms of worship presence is really good. I think it also just highlights the need for those teams to not just be, from my perspective, those teams to just be like people that we see on Sunday on stage.
Right.
It's,
no. These are us. This is us.
These are us.
Like this is, yeah. Like,
Yep.
So again, it's any barrier that says we're not this hyper polished production.
And I even think there's this like subtle message of people can be sitting out there thinking, especially people who are like, do we pay these people? Who are, Are these just
it's very professional.
Are these the hired help that we brought in from outside to run this great production or whatever? Yeah. And I think that the message is, no, we're family. Yeah. These folks are using their gifts just like we're asking you to use your gifts, and you do. Like we're all doing this together. Yeah. And I think that's a totally different message.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. And I think it's this model of again it's sacrifice and service. But I do think that there's a huge implication whether or not you have a paid team that you bring in, or they're studio musicians that are just almost like supply on a Sunday morning. No. This is just family using gifts for the glory of God.
And I'll say, as a person, again, and I'm sure you share some of these sentiments, as a person that grew up in the church model that we grew up in, there was this high value on excellence. So excellence is everything. Like God deserves our best, and which is true, absolutely still true. I think the way that expressed itself often was in these ways that we're talking about. And so one of the things I have to, I'm just confessing now to the whole podcast audience, that I personally have to give up is the excellence level of even just transitions in the service. And so to be able to sit there and go, I'm going to watch the guitarist walk up in awkward silence. There's no perfect transition where everybody has appeared. Right. Move his music stand or her music stand to the right spot, strap on the guitar, plug in the thing, get the and we're watching that all unfold almost awkwardly. And but to me, that's part of the thing of going, we're a family doing this together, and really it sends a different message. It really does.
I've struggled with that too. I think because there is, I grew up, I think, as a teen and, preteen in that excellent sort of way. What we got to do has to be polished, got to look the right way. I've backed off the word excellent, but only in the sense of how I judge it. Right. So because God does, he deserves our first fruits, the offering of praise. So what we've kind of said as a worship music team, one of our core pillars is that our preparation predicts our posture.
That's good.
Right? So the more we can prepare beforehand, the more we're going to be able to be confident in what we present on Sunday morning. Now, it might not be this, excellent from a technical standpoint. We're not a high production company. But I think even in that, Derek, it's these moments of like authenticity and vulnerability that actually, again, remind us that we're all human beings. We're not here to put on a show or create something inauthentic, but in those moments where we're now presenting our gifts and abilities before the Lord, what we're bringing, we already know is excellent because we prepared.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things
That's
too,
good.
I think subtly behind the scenes, we've said our preparation is equally important to what we're leading on Sunday morning. It has to be. And that preparation, we rehearse on Thursday nights, but I'm telling our team, it's like, no, 2 weeks before, that's maybe maybe a month before. Like, when does that preparation moment start for you where you say, I'm leading worship in 2 weeks. How am I preparing my heart?
That's right.
How am I thinking about the songs that we're going to select and bring? How are we thinking about even, and transitions? It's like, let's try to create distraction-free environments,
absolutely,
but also very authentic, freeing environments.
Yeah, that's good. So let's talk about liturgy for a second. This is an interesting word because a lot of people think of liturgy as something that's a little bit more high church, and that when we don't have confessions and creeds and stand and sit and all the stuff that goes into a liturgy, then we can't call it a liturgy. And every church has a liturgy. Yep. We have a liturgy, and even if we don't call it that, even if we don't follow the book of prayer or something like that, that. So in your view, how can a more intentional liturgy help form our people as disciple makers and missionaries, not just attenders and consumers?
Yeah, this was a challenging question for me. And again, attenders and consumers is something that I've been really meditating on recently. And actually, I'll be full transparency. When you sent this, we were preparing the liturgy word, I was like, I should just Google that, make sure I know exactly what that means in our context, right? Because that's what my mind goes to, the order of worship, right? Which is what it is. I also found out that Google and ChatGPT don't have great answers for this. It's like you kind of have to, okay, I think I'm right. I think it's the order of how we present things on a Sunday morning and what we consider to be important and how we structure those things. I was challenged by the word attenders and consumers, and here's why. Attenders never dwell. And consumers, if you're strictly consuming, create waste. So those two things, and I'm not saying that that's where my mind went. I think there are people, wonderful people that come and attend on a Sunday morning, they're getting fed and they're moving in the right direction. But when I think about those words sort of removed from people, maybe removed from our context, I would say attenders are not members of the household, and consumers, the byproduct is waste. We want to move away from that, right?
Yeah,
so
good.
I think the more intentional we can be about the service elements we have, the more intentional we can be about saying we're taking church from a teaching place to a training place, how we present tools, how we structure our services. I think one of the things it does, and we were talking a little bit about this before we got on here, was just this movement. It's seemingly this movement in young Christian men who are actually looking for liturgy. They're looking for something more substantive, more structured, more ordered. I think there's something about church and the way that we present things on a Sunday morning. Like we're children of God. I think as children, we actually crave structure. We crave something to hold on to and hang on to. So the disciple making, if we're not drawing from a source that has some sort of structure, some sort of foundation, I don't think that we can actually create effective disciple makers. I don't think we're discipling in the right way. I think there are a lot of ways to do that, but I think, again, I would say a more intentional liturgy offers a better structure and foundation that we can build our vision on.
Yeah.
So we don't have all the answers either. That was the one thing this question really challenged me. Because I was like, we're in the infancy, we're in the baby steps.
Yeah.
But I do think, and here's the thing I'll say, I think we have a lot of elements that we can put into our services. I think the thought and intention behind how we use those elements and where we structure those things can create an order that people resonate with, that will build a solid foundation for our congregation to then say, I get it. I get it. I'm starting to piece these things together. I'm starting to get motivated. I want to get outside. So
that's great.
Yeah. I think about, I want you to talk specifically about a couple of things. Like one of the ways I think that we're adjusting our liturgy a little bit is even just in involvement, participation from the congregation. I think about some of the stories around offering. I think about some of the ways we're handling scripture. Can you just talk about those couple of things and then maybe the impact that you see that kind of having on our folks?
Yeah, it's great, Derek. We've throughout the Mark series, we've been in the book of Mark for 2 years now, and one of the things that we've adopted probably over the last year in that series is bringing someone up to read the scripture for the morning, and that may seem like a small thing, but it's a level of participation and congregational involvement that really matters. I think some of the ways that we've shared, some of the tools that we've built, moving into this new Awake the Lake vision around the Dream Disciple roles, we've had people come up and model them. Mm-hmm. We've done that, like you said, in the giving moments, kind of personal stories. How does generosity affect your life? How does that? So I think when we sort of, I would say level up in terms of what we're asking our congregation to do, might be a small baby step, but some people have some really powerful stories. So to allow them to be a part of what we're doing, it's just like this mini leadership opportunity.
Yeah, that's great.
And it says, I get to have I have a part to play, not just I'm here to attend. I could potentially have a part to play.
Yeah, I just feel like there's such a huge difference when people come in and it's the paid professionals doing their thing versus we're kind of in this. And I think as we highlight stories and there's this connect the dots moments where people go, oh, I could do that. We've talked before about, moving from wow to aha. When if people come and just go, wow, look at that great thing that they did, and that sermon was great, and everything was polished, versus aha, which is, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, and I've had a number of people after those Sundays, people will come up or reach out and say, hey, anytime you need a scripture read, I'd be happy to do it.
Oh, cool.
Next time you need I'd be happy to do it. And sometimes it's the people that we ask, they're like, if you ever need that done again, I'm happy to. Oh. So it's like, it's this, I can have a part in this.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah.
And meanwhile, all the smaller church pastors that are listening are like, hey, idiots, we've been doing this all along.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Don't remind us.
Fine.
Yeah,
I want to come back one thing. We're certainly not going to get to all of our questions, but I want to come back to this young men craving some liturgy and some substance. I think it's a thing. Mm-hmm. You were even actually on a call that talked about this kind of men and women gap in the church, which is fascinating.
I think for the first time in the history of tracking it, the fastest shrinking demographic in the church is young married women.
Which is wild.
That has implications too.
Because honestly, the women have carried the church for a lot of years.
Yeah, it'd be fine if it would flip. As long as it flips, it's fine.
Right.
Yeah. As long as it truly does. And what do we have to do to help?
Right. Well, one of the comments came after the Ash Wednesday service. I'd like you to talk about the Ash Wednesday service for a minute, and just your kind of approach to that and takeaways from that. Because that was where we did the imposition of ashes and all. We went full on. And into that kind of tradition, which can raise some eyebrows, but that was where I had the young dudes come up and were like, we actually were playing with Anglicanism and Catholicism and the more because we wanted something more solid. And then Grace Church did this night that was very kind of rooted in some of the creeds and confessions. And so maybe just talk about your impression, of that night.
Yeah. So I walked away from that night and I know we kind of shared some thoughts. That was one of the most powerful worship experiences I think I've had since I've been on staff here, probably since I've been, at Grace, which has been about 2.5 years. I'll say one thing. I think it was also one of the most structured nights we've ever had, with components that actually really filled out the bill rather than just, we feel like we've got to get this in, so we're going to create some margin. From start to finish, I feel like it was a really well thought out, well planned out service. And one of the cool things was a lot of that came from one of our volunteers. Working with staff, but the vision for that, I know it was prayed over, I know it was prepared for. I think, again, when we can provide that structure, and I think too, so we'll talk about younger guys. There's a pressure on young men in society, just like there is on young women. But I think the pressure on young men is to be yourself, kind of macho, like independent, all this stuff. That's not how we're actually built at all. Right. In the image of God, we're built to be connected to Him. We're built to be dependent on Him. Right. So a culture that tells you to push out, find yourself, all of this stuff. I'm like, that doesn't end with actual fulfillment, satisfaction, anything like that. So when you get back to some of these ancient traditions that have survived thousands of years, and they still make sense and they still add context and substance to what we're doing, I think young men especially can go back to that and say, this is tried and true.
Yeah.
I'm tired of like the push out, try to find, try to be independent, try to be this, try to, the pressure of the world is going to, push that on them to return to something that has substance, that has order, I think it's a quiet space versus the noise of the world. It's a less distracted space versus the distraction of the world. Yeah. It's actually a much lower pressure place given the pressure of the world, right? Sure. If I'm sitting in my humility before a holy God, realizing that all of my strength, everything I have, the breath in my lungs comes from him, there's a deep, deep peace and quiet in that. They do not get that from the world.
Right.
So I think there's something so attractive about that. And I love the fact that Ash Wednesday, what we did in that service that I thought was so cool, we took an old tradition, and I think our church does this well. We gave it gospel context. We put it, we redeemed sort of that ancient tradition. And that to me was the most powerful experience of the night, was just seeing something that's old that even I fully did not, I was like, I'm not sure I understand this fully. Being able to put that in the proper context, add a gospel influence, being able to talk about it, understand it, it created something. I was like, somebody messaged me this morning. They were like, "Are we doing that again next year?" I was like, "Yes." We are. Like, sorry. I mean, that's like non-negotiable. We're doing that again. So, those old traditions, redeeming some of those older traditions, and providing a modern, but also more importantly, gospel context around some of those things, has the power, I think, to shape the next generation of worship in our churches.
And I agree with everything you said. As I'm pondering it, listening to you talk, my guardrail with these young dudes, as I think about it, why is that attractive to them? One of the concerns that I have about it is because it's all those things that you said, like when the world's frantic, this is quiet. When the world's paced, this is still. What I want to make sure doesn't happen is that young dudes are attracted to it because I can go recite creeds, do these planned prayers, but then I don't have to do anything about it. Like I can have that moment of, and a church like ours, like we're pushing hard. We're pushing our people hard to be a disciple, man. And as long as that's not the swing back. They're like, I would just want a place where I'm not asked to do anything.
Right. You can't religion your way out of your commitment to Jesus, right? Like you can't religion your way out of your call to discipleship. And I think, I agree with you. I think that is there is a
counterbalance or something. Like that.
Exactly. It's got to be met with the same challenges on the other end. So
that's good. Let's talk about transcendence for a second, then we got to go. This has been great. We could talk for hours and hours. Talk about transcendence for a second. We had actually kind of a pastoral conversation about this a few months ago about just like, part of what coming out of COVID, coming out of digital space, it's like, what can these rooms, what can we offer people when they come to one of our rooms in worship that they're not going to get online, that they can't get even in a life group? There's something that happens in a big group that can't happen in a small group. There's something that happens when we're embodied that can't happen when we're remote. And I think transcendence is kind of a good word that we've put around that. Just talk about creating moments where people can experience the presence and power of God.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I think we can do that corporately. I won't say better than we can do it in smaller groups. I think transcendence is, you can experience that through a lot of things. But I think there's something about gathering with the saints and lifting the name of Jesus in song and worship. I think there's something in those moments. And again, I think just gathering in the presence of God, acknowledging that he's here with us, it can provide a rich perspective that offers us this very vertical position. I am low, he is high, right? And so to be able to do that and do it effectively, I think, and so I'll mention one thing that I think we haven't touched on yet, but I think it is important, like the role of emotions in worship. And I think this is kind of where transcendence hits. And when we talk about worship, we're talking about the breadth of our Sunday morning experiences, but focusing in for a minute just on worship music, which I think is such a biblical concept, the praise element of music in our worship services. To be able to present something that is emotionally stimulating. And I'm not talking about creating something inauthentic, but creating something where our emotions can actually be connected to the one who gave us emotions. And being able to experience his presence in a different way than we do, again, sort of with other distractions, other things that are, we have this ability corporately to do that. And experience a God who's so much bigger, so much outside of us, so much other than us. It puts us in a position of humility. It also, I think, highlights our posture out of that needs to be gratitude. Like, if we really understand what God did for us, how big he is, how small we are, but what he invites us into missionally, our posture out of those transcendent moments of worship, where I really get a picture of the glory of God, the bigness of God, the majesty of God, I should be running out of those doors and being like, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Like, what can I do for you? So
that's good.
Creating moments. I think as worship leaders, that's one of the things. Worship music. We talk about the lights and the smoke and all this stuff. We don't have smoke, I don't think. But
well.
but the idea that what we are producing sort of on a Sunday morning, I just think has the ability to enter people into an emotional state where they can really experience God in a new way.
Yeah.
So,
and I think too, we talked about this earlier in this episode, but how much greater is the attractional method of transcendence than, we're giving away flowers or whatever we're doing, and not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but like to know that has that, lasting impact. And that's just a beautiful thought. Okay, so thanks for joining us, Andrew. We're going to cut it.
Thanks, guys.
We'll do 18 more episodes with you.
Yeah.
Woo. Yay! Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Okay, that was great with Andrew.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Love him.
Would love to have him around. He's a great dude.
He is so wise the
Yeah,
way
he's
he
just
talks.
a thoughtful dude.
He's very. I know this is like a deficit that I have. I'm much more likely to trust a person who's articulate.
Oh.
And I know sometimes I'm not articulate, but like I'm like, oh, you need $50, no problem. Like, I'll.
You just said that sentence correctly.
That was
so
wow.
I'll give you whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a problem that I have.
Yeah.
But anyway, he is intelligent without that, but he's a cool guy.
Can you imagine the philosophizing that happened at that ice cream store?
Oh my gosh.
He must have just been.
I'm so mad about that. Was it the one by the lake?
Like
literally by the lake. Sorry. Bye everybody. Okay, so let's talk about what happened this week. So we were in a room with a couple other people and just talking about we were looking at curriculum.
Why were we in the room?
Well,
there's a little bit of a panic.
Do you want me
moment.
to say why?
You can.
Okay.
I mean, not specifically, but yeah.
So Derek, you just got a date wrong with an organization that you were working with.
I have a speaking engagement coming up far sooner than I thought it was.
And in Derek's world and our world, that's kind of like a little nuclear bomb going off because everything is so scheduled so nicely.
Right.
So you reached out to some of us and were like, "Can you give me some feedback on this?" Second eyes, because you were kind of scrambling, or not scrambling, but feeling like you wanted to get it right. Yeah. So that you could then prepare it.
It's the thing where I had all the material.
Yeah.
I just didn't have a good flow,
and you're working on so many things right now.
Well, the way I described it is,
good.
It's like everybody's doing puzzles now because we're in the middle of this digital fast. So I said, I feel like I have 3 puzzles open. All of the pieces are together in the same pile.
Yeah.
And so when I'm trying to put together 3 puzzles and I don't even know, it's easy to find the edges when you're just working on one puzzle, but you're picking up edges going, I don't even know which of the 3 this belongs to. So you guys were very gracious to give up 90
awesome.
minutes of your week to help me sort through my mess.
Yeah, anytime. End of the podcast.
Right.
No, but so anyway, as we are wont to do,
right.
We helped you with that, but as we were helping you with that, I could tell we were all kind of like thinking of things, and we ended up having a discussion about, as we're learning about training and leaning more into that, we started talking about different environments and leaders in those environments and what those environments have to do.
Yep.
And this is not anything that's set in stone. Right. It was just like a thought.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about it since.
Right.
So I just wanted to dissect it a little bit more.
And I think it comes to as we're learning so much about training, and this is just kind of a general problem I think leaders have, is that like the latest thing we learn, we try to apply to everything.
Yes.
And so, I just bring it into every room I'm in and say, well, we're doing this way now and whatever. And I think one of the corrective measures, and hopefully we're catching it soon enough, is that, we are wanting to become more of a training center, but that doesn't mean that we're not teaching anymore. Right. And it doesn't mean that we don't have smaller arenas that are more discussion based, and not every environment is a training environment. Right. And so I think part of the learning is just like, we need to bring definition to what environments, what we're trying to accomplish in each. And then what kind of people are good at leading those kind of environments, And so I think Scott kind of presented this breakdown as he's been thinking he's going to be moving forward kind of more in charge of like training trainers and like getting the right people in the right leadership spaces. And so he had this good breakdown of kind of like roles or different kinds of skills maybe. That are
we're not even to the point where it totally makes sense. Yet, but like, the idea, so still doing teaching, so we're still going to need teachers. Yeah. Whether that's from preaching to like actually teaching in an environment, one to many. Right. That's a certain skill. We have trainers, which is, it's kind of like a combo, I would say, of like a teacher and a good coach, like a personal trainer kind of thing. Yeah, because I mean, as we were talking, it's like the in training, there's like part of it is you being prepared to lead through a certain, a group of information that you're presenting, but you also have to be responsive in that moment to the people that are in the room. So unlike a sermon on Sunday where it's like there's not a whole lot of give and take. No one's going to shout out a question.
Right, it's one-sided. You've prepared it. You're delivering it. In a training environment, it's more, I've prepared something. I'm going to deliver it. But depending on how the group now responds to that, I'm going to go a different direction and respond to the group. And so it's a little bit more two-way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And I think that then the teaching, which is a little bit more one-way.
That's a good way to put it.
But then the next, level down is we talk about coaches, which are more, then a coach is more just about the other person. Like the coach doesn't have a whole bunch of
they just have tools,
stuff that they're bringing to the table to present. Yeah. They're saying, what are you trying to accomplish? Yeah. And now I'm going to come alongside you and help you accomplish that thing.
Yeah, that's good. What was it? Like the idea of mentors, like at a kind of like we said, maybe at even a life group. That's kind of a life group level, that smaller group of people where you're kind of co-creating.
Right. Yeah.
Life on life. What does this look like? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. I think mentors is a more, it's kind of more like a training environment, but it's a little bit more one-on-one. It's a smaller. Yeah. And then, facilitators are more, they're just trying to get the room to come up with some great stuff together. Yeah. So I'm just asking good questions and then I'm letting the room kind of determine where we go with this.
It's like an active host, like a more active host kind of a thing.
And when you think about those, and again, we're not setting policy, we're not doing anything, but just thinking about those 5 different levels of people. And for us going forward, what kind of environments are those, are we going to have where those 5 kind of skill sets are required? And, I think it's just been clarifying to have some language around that. Yeah,
and I think it'll help. Yeah, it'll help us be able to even set expectation for people who are taking part in these things to know, like, oh, that's, and not this language, but that's a teaching. Oh, that's a training. Oh, that's a coaching. Right. Oh, that's a whatever we use.
What environment am I in?
Yeah. What am I doing? What are my expectations? What, just like we were talking with Andrew, like I'm not going to walk into a 500 person room and they're going to ask me to tell my life story. Oh, I'm walking into a 4 person room. They're going to probably ask me to share, Right. So yeah. Anyway, just a little meandering tidbit. Okay. I think that's it. Decent for today. I'm going to start rating us. I give today a 7.5 out of 10. Mainly based on me. I'll give you a 10. I'll give you a 10, no, Andrew a 10.
Listen.
I'm not trying to be self-deprecating. It's
you
just
are.
Off day. Okay. If you like this episode, I'll pause and let you think about it. Tell us by leaving a rating or review.
Everybody's doing their own ranking right now.
Oh, okay.
That was about a 6.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 5 stars, so I put us above that.
They're like 7 is generous.
Yeah. Oh man, we need to do promos Okay, so, but more importantly, make sure you subscribe. We still have Dave and Shane coming from Clarity House and some other great guests coming up. Don't want you to miss that. We're almost at the end of the season, actually. And help a friend by sharing this with them. You can also go to DerekSanford.com/reinventing church. You'll find the show notes for this episode and others and any related resources. You can also subscribe to your newsletter there.
Yep.
Which is just such a good newsletter, honestly. I'm not just being nice. It's good. No, it's good.
Yeah, no,
you do good work with it.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.
See you next week.
Peace.
Bye.